Welcome to the Experience Strategy Podcast, where we talk to customers and experts about how to create products and services that feel like time well spent. And now, here are your hosts, experienced strategists, Dave Norton and Aranza Savas.
Welcome to the Experience Strategy Podcast. I'm Aranza Savas.
And I'm Dave Norton.
And today, well, grab a cup of coffee because we're going to spill the tea today. It's a dishy episode here with one of our favorite listeners and experienced strategist, Mr. John Dahl. He works in experience design at the large U.S. financial services firm, Edward Jones. But today, he's here as a customer. So John had a messy customer experience recently. And messy, honestly, just doesn't really even begin to describe what happened to poor John. And as an experienced strategist, you can imagine he experienced this maybe a little differently than some other consumers. So today, he's going to share his story. And we're going to break down what broke down and see how we can all learn from this to do better by and for our treasured customers in the future. So, John, thank you for being here. Let's dish. Now, tell us about your story. What happened?
Well, I'm thrilled to be here with you today. I think it's really, really interesting what happened. So we were together in New Orleans about a month ago for one of our sessions of the awesome Transformation Economy Collaborative, and having a great time. And one of my favorite parts of being in the collaborative is typically on day 2, we'll go on walkabout with someone from another organization, usually 2 someones from another organization, learn what they're learning from their experience in the collaborative, how their industry looks at creating excellent experiences and transformation. And we were out about it. And I'm on my second walk, and we're walking around beautiful downtown New Orleans, walking around the blocks, and walked up the alley in between the hotel where I had parked my rental car, and noticed that behind my rental car, there's a police car. In the alley in front of my rental car, there's a police car. And then pulled alongside my rental car is an unmarked police car. Now, I had that second. We've all had that second, right? Where my heart clenched up and I went, oh no, did I park illegally? Did I park in the wrong spot? But I was very careful, and I got very lucky to get this great spot right next to the hotel. And I was like, no, I don't think there's anything wrong. And I see the cops kind of standing around the corner of the next building over. I was like, it's got to be just total coincidence that they're parked next to my car. So we continued on our walkabout, and I was learning from my friend. We get just back to the building where the collaborative was happening, and my cell phone rings. Now, normally I would have just ignored it, except I had my wife at home with 2 kids already with strep, and I thought maybe the third might have it. So I just thought, I'll glance to see if it's her. And I glance and see, and it's just a phone number, and underneath it says New Orleans, Louisiana. Well, normally if I were at home, I would ignore that. But I was thinking, well, I'm in New Orleans, and the call's coming from New Orleans, so I'm going to answer the phone. So I answer the phone. I say, this is John. And a gentleman on the other end says, is this Mr. John Dahl? And I said, well, yes, it is. He said, Mr. Dahl, this is INV so-and-so with the Louisiana State Highway Patrol. I don't want to freak you out.
The surest way to freak somebody out.
I mean, totally well-intentioned. I don't want to freak you out. Did you rent a rental car from so-and-so and da-da-da-da? And I said, yeah. And he said, well, your car's been stolen. And it's been part of the, TikTok challenge or whatever, where they, get in and steal the car using a defect in the steering column. And he says, we don't know where the car is. I don't know, but the other cops are going to call you. I said, well, I think I know where the car is, and I think I know where the police are. I'm going to just head over there. He's like, well, I'm not sure. They'll be calling you in a second. I said, well, I'm going to walk over there. So turn around to walk back to my rental car. Yeah, And my buddy I was walking with, he's like, do you want me to come? Or I said, hey, man, if you want to see the show, you're more than welcome. But if you want to go back to class, I understand. So he came with me, too. Just, curious to see what happened.
I would have come.
So just as we're approaching where the car is parked, my phone rings, and I see one of the officers standing there on his cell phone And I answer my phone and I said, "Hi, this is John. Can you see me waving?" And he said, "Oh, yeah. So get down to him. He explains, what's happened. Well, now I can see that on the passenger side of the car, they've busted out the rear passenger side window so that they could climb in. And then the entire steering column is all torn apart. There's glass all over the place." And the officer says, "Yeah, the gentleman tried to steal your car. He was a younger guy. It was the TikTok challenge thing. He actually came back 3 times over the course of the night. We've got him on video," because I also didn't realize I was parked like triangulated between 3 different cameras just perfectly. So they had him on video. He failed multiple times to try to execute the challenge on my rental car, but had snuck off and stolen 2 other cars throughout the night, and then just kept coming back to mine.
Persistence, I'll be
yeah,
honest.
he gets an A+ for not giving up.
Yeah.
But then we go through and he says, so we've called the rental car company, and we told them we can have the car towed. They said, no, we'll send our own truck. So they're sending their own tow truck. And really what we need from you is just, stay around, fill out some paperwork. Do you have any items in the car? I said, well, I got my hoodie right there in the back seat, but that's it. Everything else is in the hotel room. I said, can I have that? And he was like, well, after we fill out the paperwork. I said, great. And so I'm standing there and waiting because they got to fill out the paperwork. They got other crime scenes and da-da-da-da. And finally, my buddy goes back to class. So I'm standing there for about 45 minutes or an hour. And the tow truck pulls up into the alley. And, employee gets out, national on the vest and everything else. And starts hooking
so
up
that
the
was
car.
the big reveal. That was a really soft, big reveal. Who the rental car
Yeah.
agency was.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody ignore that. So they have the rental car logo on their thing, and they start hooking up the car, and they say, "Hey, do you have the keys?" And I said, "Oh, they're just up in the room. I'll run and get the keys for you." "Yeah, of course you need the keys." So run all the way up 12 floors, come back down, hand them off the keys, and then I'm left still standing there. And finally, the police officer comes over and he says, "Here's your report. Will you sign this, saying you didn't lend the kid the car and da-da-da-da. All right, Mr. Dahl, you're on your way." And I'm thinking, like, what happens now?
Yeah.
So here's the first point that we get back to the room, and I'm sharing with folks on my way, like, what all's gone down. And I asked some folks. I'm in a room full of experienced strategists, granted, but listeners, you're probably experienced strategists too. Maybe ask your friends what they would do. But you're a rental car company. We know that the rental car company was contacted because 1, the police officer told me so they could send the recovery truck, but also 2, that's how the police got my phone number.
Right.
Oh my gosh.
Now, at this point, it's been about an hour and 45 minutes since I was first contacted by the police. You're the rental car company. What do? My thinking is you call your customer and you say, "Oh my gosh, are you okay? We're so sorry this happened, da-da-da-da," right? And we'll get around to that later. Just keep in mind, this has not happened yet. So I come back up. We've got an exciting speaker lined up, as we always do, for the
let's
afternoon
be
of
clear,
day 2.
The only people it sounds like who have asked you if you are okay are your classmates from the Experience Strategy Collaborative and the cops, who are maybe not super known for their empathy. That might not be like their leading training skill.
Mm-hmm.
And you were certainly not a customer of the cops.
But
at least
I don't even pay taxes in the state of Louisiana.
That's right.
Yeah.
At least they said, "Hey, I don't want to freak you out."
Yeah,
so they
that's
acknowledge
a great
that you
point.
are a human being with emotion, whereas it doesn't sound like National did.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that because I want to emphasize right up front, if anyone from that company is listening, this was not your people. Your people behaved exactly as trained and within your core value proposition. So we'll get to that in a bit. But I do want to call out that both the Louisiana State Highway Patrol and the New Orleans City Police Department, every interaction I had with their people was phenomenal. They were incredible. They executed their jobs with honor and empathy and care, and I appreciate them so much. So I get back up and I'm about to go into class, and I'm not an anxious person. I tend to roll with the flow. I actually had thought most of this was funny up to this point, but I'm getting really anxious. I'm like, do they know that like, they've got the car. What happens now? Am I still responsible? Like, am I going to have to pay money? Is the firm going to have to pay money? Like, what's going to happen? So step back out, and I call the only number I have, which is 800 general customer service from the email that I got, the confirmation email. So I call, and none of the options work. So I just kind of hit 0, and I'm sitting outside the class. And about 10 minutes later, I get connected.
Has your car been jacked? Press 9.
Right. Yeah. They don't even have an option. Like, is this an emergency where you need to, and I get connected
Like,
to
I
their
guess
call
this falls
center
into
very,
other.
right. Very obviously in India. And the guy says, he opens with, "Can I have your reservation number, please?" I'm like, okay. So I'm a number now. So gave him the number, and he pulls it up, and I kind of explain and go through the story of what's happened, just like I've told you. And he says, "Okay, so as I understand it, this happened, and the car won't work." I said, "Well, yeah, the car, I guess it won't work because the steering column's broken. I mean, it's undrivable." And he said, "Okay, so the car won't work because the steering column's broken. No problem, Mr. Dahl. I'm going to put in a case for you to be refunded the entire cost of your rental. You won't have to pay a thing. I'll be right back." Puts me on hold. Like, no break. Puts me on hold. Gets in the computer, does whatever he does. Like 3 minutes later, comes back on, says, "Mr. Dahl, I've got great news. I've submitted the case. You won't have to pay a thing. Your refund will be issued as soon as you return the keys. You'll get your refund." And I told him, I said, I've already returned the keys. He said, "Great. As soon as you return the keys, you'll get your refund." I opened my mouth to start asking questions, and he says, "Thank you so much for doing business with us. Please stay on the line to complete my survey," and hangs up. And the survey comes up, 0 to 5. How happy are you? Now, I know, because I've worked in this business long enough, if I put anything less than 5, this poor guy is going to lose his job.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Like, that's how this works in these call centers. And he didn't do anything wrong. He did exactly as he was trained. Right. So I hit 5, and I hung up, and I thought, great.
Oh my gosh.
I've got my case number. I know I'm going to get a refund. They know they have the car. And it still stuck with me, though. And so then I was like, I go back in class, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I just don't know. So I go back out again, call the same 800 number, wait on hold another 10 minutes. And another guy answers the phone, and I say, "Okay, before you get anything from me, I just need you to know I need to be escalated to a US based, like, manager level, whether that's your boss or boss above. I have some very specific questions I need to know." And so they say, "Okay," very quickly, which was great. Put me on hold again. I'm on hold for another 10 minutes. And someone finally answers the phone. "Reservation number, please." Give them the reservation number. Tell them everything that's happened. And I said, "I just need you to confirm, please, that in your system, you have the car, you have the keys, and everything's good." And so he puts me back on hold, goes through, says, "Oh yeah, Mr. Dahl, we've got it. We've got the car. By the way, do you have the police report number?" Asked me a few other questions, and then asked me, "Oh, and do you still have the keys?" And I'm like, no. I gave the keys to the tow truck driver, as I shared with you, as I shared with the first representative. You have the keys. He said, "Great, thanks. Have a nice day." Right? Now, here's another thing to point out. At this point, I've talked to 2 people from that company, actually 3 if you count the tow truck driver. They are in the business of renting cars. I'm in the middle of New Orleans and no longer have a car. At this point, no one has offered me a car. No car. Right? So go back into class. I'm feeling better. We go out to a fantastic dinner experience that night. Fantastic dinner experience. I've got a great story to tell over dinner. I've decided
You're
at
all
this point,
wildly
you know what?
entertained.
Right. I'm just going to go back to I'm going to
Hand
Uber back to the
grenades.
airport and, call home, tell my wife the story. She's like just gobsmacked at everything that's happened. And I'm like, this is just bizarre. It's the weirdest thing I've ever been through. So I get up the next morning, come back into the collaborative. And it's about 9:30 a.m. So we're sneaking up on the 24-hour point since this saga began. And my cell phone rings again, and it's New Orleans. I'm like, well, it could be the police, could be anybody, right? So I step outside, answer the phone. At this point, it is finally someone local. It is the general manager of the local national at the airport. We've said the name again. And he opens the phone. He says, Mr. Dahl, I heard what happened. So sorry that happened. How did this happen? Where was the car parked? What happened to the car? Where was the damage? Da, 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 da. Goes through this litany of questions for me to explain everything. And you know, I'm just laughing, and he's being kind enough. And then he says, well, do you still have the keys? And I explained again, no, I gave the keys went with the car with the tow truck driver. He said, okay, that's good. That's good. That's great. That's great. Finally, toward the end of the call, he says, well, how are you? Are you okay? And I said, yeah, I'm actually pretty good today. I was a little off kilter yesterday, but I'm pretty good today. You know, thanks so much for asking. And he says, well, you know, if you come back to New Orleans again, here's my cell phone number. Call me personally. We'll make sure we get you taken care of with a car and get you all set up. Thanks, and have a great day. And then we're about to get off the phone. And he goes, oh, wait, Mr. Dahl, are you still in town? And I said, yeah, I'm still in town. I fly out tomorrow morning. And he said, oh, do you need a car?
Ding, 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 ding.
And so I said, no.
25 hours later, the prize goes
I'm
to
gonna
the
Uber
local
to the
manager.
airport. Yeah, I figured out I'm gonna Uber to the airport tomorrow. You know, it just I've got it right. And
Oh my
I
gosh.
thought that was the end of the saga. And Aransas, you think it's the end of the saga.
Oh, I
So
can't wait.
just earlier this week, actually it was over the weekend, I opened up my email
Somebody
on my
has
phone
to
to
say
look
it
for
though.
something else.
But wait, there's more.
And in my email is an invoice for my rental in New Orleans a month later. And so now I've gone online and submitted a customer service request to try and get that resolved. And so that's the funny bit. Yeah. And
this is a
so
month
before
later
we get it,
for those who
right,
are following along in here. It is a full month later.
Yeah. And so, you know, in full fairness and transparency, the more I've done a lot of thinking about this because the breakdowns are so many. And let's say that what I love about this company, and I will still rent from this company when I travel for business because of what I love about them. Out of operational efficiency, client intimacy, customer intimacy, or product innovation, they have chosen operational efficiency as what they're going to lean into as their key value. And they, in my opinion, do it better than anyone in the business for the business traveler. I arrive in almost any city across the country. I get off my plane. I don't carry on I don't check luggage because I want to get going. I walk through the airport, I get to the rental center, wherever it is, bypass all counters, go out, determine which car I need. Do I need a small little car like the one I got in New Orleans? Or do I have colleagues with me that I want to drive around? So I want a minivan. And I just get in it, keys are in it, I drive out, I pay, and it's awesome. And here's what I've realized. So we talked earlier about, and you called it out so well, Aransas, the police were the first, and actually for a long time, the only people to acknowledge that I was a person. And I was like, how does that happen? But here's what I've thought about. They've leaned so hard and so well into their operational efficiency that if everything goes as I want it to go, their people never interact with me, ever.
Right.
They have no human interaction with their customers on an organic basis if everything works the way that it's supposed to. And the great news is this organization, I can tell you, they must have a world-class and highly effective training organization. Because what did every single person that I talked to from that company ask me about? Do you remember? Do you have the keys?
Do you have your keys?
Do you have
the keys?
Do you have the $250 to $500 set of keys that we gave you? Every single person. That means every person in their operation has been trained.
It's effective. Yeah.
To look at those keys. Where are the keys? Right? So they've got the mechanism in place. So then the challenge, I think, for them and for me as an experienced strategist is I think about what weaknesses are we leaving open as an organization? We've chosen client intimacy, right? But you've got to get all three up to parity. So what are the weaknesses we're overlooking in operational efficiency or potentially in product innovation as we focus on client intimacy? Just as this company has potentially missed, how do we make sure we're humanizing our customers for every person in our organization such that our first reaction is, are you okay? How can we help?
Yes.
Yeah,
So
that's really
that's the
interesting.
story.
Woo! And what
Yeah,
a
that's
story
really
it
interesting.
is. We,
But I take a different lesson from your story. I love that story. I've heard it before, but I laugh every single time I hear it. Um, but what I take away from it is a little bit different. I think that we as companies do not plan for when things go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
We have
uncertainty is
policies for when,
certain.
yeah, right, exactly. Uncertainty is certain. We
Sorry, that was just
plan
me
for,
talking about the trend
yeah,
report
no,
again.
that's where I was headed.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. We tend to plan for things going right. And today, the more channels that you have to interact with your customers, the more likely things are to go wrong.
Mm-hmm.
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 And we have to have multiple channels. You know, if you're a large company like the company that cannot be named, then you
Oh, we named them.
have
And
to. I know, I know, I know.
we're going to keep naming them.
Then
You know
you
what?
have
In
to
And
fact,
I
I'm
have.
going to
love them. I
interrupt.
love them so much.
Yes. Well, and my hope here is somebody is listening to this and they know somebody in CX at National because we want to talk to you. We want to know how this works in your organization and how you expect the unexpected. All right, back to you, Dave. So forward this if you
Yeah,
know
no.
people at
I, I
CX
think
at National.
I think this is one of the big challenges that experienced strategists have to address. You can be very focused on your values. You can do a great job around your values, efficiency, if that's what it's about. That's fantastic. But you still, as an experienced strategist, have to plan for things breaking or people
Mm-hmm.
breaking in. if you're if you sell cars, right? Or you rent cars, right? And I don't think we do as
Yeah.
experienced strategists. We just don't even want to address that. We want that journey to look so pure,
Mm-hmm.
and yet these are the stories that get told over and over again amongst friends on podcasts and etc. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Right. And I
you
mean,
gotta
I
find
think to John's point, as a customer, what he's telling us is a jobs to be done story, right? He said they're really good at the functional job. I feel really confident in their ability to do these functional jobs.
that.
I do not feel good about their ability to do so, to do emotional jobs.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying is no, they don't get credit for doing the functional job because the functional job is anticipating that things will break and having
Yes.
a process for addressing that very functional requirement of
Hmm.
your operation. And so I think both of you are absolutely right. But the other thing that struck me is, and maybe I'm just sensitive to this right now because it was on a flight last week on the way home from Mexico. The woman in the row behind me, um, to my children, sounded exactly like all the Karens on the TikTok videos they watch. But I was listening to it with a slightly different ear because this woman was traveling with two small children, one a lap child, one a toddler, and a spouse. She's in a row of three. Her mother's seated behind her. Now, I don't know what really happened. I wasn't a part of any of their purchasing moments. I was not involved in any of the behind the scenes here. However, what she described is that somehow the seats she had purchased had not been reserved for her. And whether it was a double booking situation, it was a miscommunication. Out of the 5 seats she purchased, only 4 were available to her. Somebody else was sitting in that 5th one. And the seat she had purchased for her mother in another class had not been provided to her. And she was now back at the back of the plane with the rest of us. And this woman was really frustrated. And she kept asking, but what are you going to do? And the flight attendant, who is in such a difficult position, and I have a world of empathy for, was like, nothing. There's nothing we're going to do for you because there's nothing we can do for you. So all of that I get. On both sides, I can see how frustrating it is. But where it got interesting to me as an experienced strategist was when the flight attendant said, well, you should have double checked to make sure the seats were the way you wanted them. You should have told the gate agent about this issue. You should. And the flight attendant was just like on this path, and she was not relenting. And this passenger, right or wrong, and I really don't know where the breakdown happened, but this passenger kept saying, okay, maybe I should have done things differently. But literally all I want you to do for me right now is say, I'm sorry. This must be frustrating. And the flight attendant was like, but you should have told them. And she said, I'm just asking you to hear me and to acknowledge that this is frustrating. Well, you should have. And the flight attendant could not get past pointing the blame at the passenger who may have deserved the blame. But the passenger over and over was like, just hear me. And in that moment where the guy disconnected from you on that first call, it was like, all I wanted in the world was for him to hear you. Because you were giving him so many clues that all you wanted to do was be a human. I love that moment you said, oh, so now I'm a number.
I know. I thought that was really well done. John, you did a great job.
You're not a number. You're a human, and you were just asking to be treated like a human. And maybe not, in this case, clearly the blame was not yours, right? But blame isn't the point.
Yeah.
There's so much more we can do as humans if we treat people like humans and we just listen to what they're asking for in that moment.
Sure. There are so many frontline people right now that are under so much pressure, and they've been under pressure for so long, and it is really affecting us, as customers
and employers and providers. It's hard on everyone
because they're at the front line. And it used to be that we could say, you got to have empathy, you got to have empathy, you got to have empathy. But somehow we have to step back and say, hey, the system is broken for people on both sides of this, the employee as well as the customer. And then they get in this difficult situation. Reminds me of some research that I did many years ago on problem resolution. And what we found with problem resolution, normally when you think about an experience, and I bring up this idea of anticipation, it's like, oh, the start of the experience, and then there's this ramping up of anticipation until the climactic moment of the experience, and then the denouement. It's called a Freytag model, right? And that's the way we think about anticipation. Well, when you're dealing with a problem, there's anticipation as well, but it's negative anticipation. And we came up with this framework that we called PARM: problem, negative anticipation, or anticipation going down, and then resolution.
I thought you were doing like a Price Pfister thing. PNARM. PARM. Silent N.
PARM.
Sorry. All right.
Right.
Say them again.
Because what happens, it's problem, negative anticipation, resolution, memory. Okay? You have to, as an experienced strategist, design for those three elements. When the person gets on the call, when the person takes the call, that's the employee, they have to realize that if there's negative anticipation happening, the customer has already been on a journey. They've already been on a journey, and they have to pick up right away on the fact that, hey, there's a bunch of things that have been going on here, and I am just now getting involved. And many companies do not know how to train for that. They just don't. They know how to help you find the keys, right? I mean, that's It's a classic example, right? But they don't know how to like stop, listen, and say, okay, this person is having a really bad day and they're scared, they're
Yeah.
worried. So you could call that empathy, but I think that there's more to it than just empathy. And
Mm-hmm.
I think somehow we have to train our employees to say, look, don't take it personal. We think you're great. We we think you're a fantastic flight attendant. We love you, and we've got your back.
Right.
And
You've got
just
an impossibly difficult
be
job.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
And it's
just
going to
know
be, I
that
mean, honestly, it was harder on that flight attendant because she couldn't just say, I get it. It's hard. I'm sorry. We can't do
yeah,
more.
Yeah.
yeah,
That woman would have shut up,
yeah.
possibly. Right. Like, I don't know for sure, but possibly the passenger would have been relieved
You
to, I mean,
never know these days.
you know, the truth is, though, anytime we talk to somebody, if we acknowledge and validate emotion, we diffuse the situation,
Mm,
period.
Right.
mm,
This must be
Period.
frustrating. How can I help?
Yep.
Right.
mhm.
And
Can't
that
maybe, can I
question,
get you some
how
extra
can I
snacks for the
help?
kids? Like
How can I
whatever.
help?
Yeah.
We're watching New Amsterdam. Have either of you watched that show?
Mm-hmm.
It's a
No,
great
not yet.
example of this. All right, great example in popular media. Great television show. I'm a huge fan now. I'm watching it with my kids. It's just like it's a hospital show, but it's full of empathy and compassion and humanity
Mm,
in this really loving way. It's very sweet. But the medical director, the thing he's done that is so radical and is changing the face of how people lead a hospital is he leads every interaction with, how can I help?
mm,
So with the patients, with the caregivers, with the families, he asks that question over, how can I help? And then he gets information with which to actually effectively help. So it's like, if I take it back
mm,
to meaningful motivation and all the work we do around that, that's the essence of what we're trying to do, is say, how can I help? Because once you understand what help looks like to your customer, client, patient, you can
mhm,
actually deliver on that support in a way that's meaningful. Until you understand that, you're just making up answers.
mhm.
You're
Yeah.
staying on your own train instead of getting on your customer's train.
Yeah. Man, John, I hope like if you need some free counseling or something like that, we'll get you in touch with Arancis. She can help you work through some of those feelings that you have towards New Orleans and so forth. I feel for you, buddy.
Well, and I'll
I
share. Like, I am very fortunate in that I I have the personality and temperament that I have because
Mhm.
it's been a very out of body and fun experience in a lot of ways for me. But I also know that not everyone is like that, and I think about
Right.
even my wife, what she'd have felt like if she was alone in New Orleans. We have very
Sure.
different temperaments. I think it would have been a very anxiety producing situation for her. And I love how you called it out, Dave, because I can't emphasize enough. I don't think the company's people underperformed in this
Mhm.
situation. They did the very best they could within the system that existed and the resources and tools that were given to them. They really
Sure.
did. And it's on us, it's incumbent as us on us as business leaders to design systems and approaches and experiences and capabilities in a way such that things like this don't happen. So it is
Yeah.
almost impossible for our people to fail. Aranzis, to your point, I think it's very, very difficult to design the reactionary response to this
Mhm.
situation. Easy solution: somebody at that company knew my car had been stolen before I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
So who do the police call when that happens? Well, let's maybe train those people. Hey, you've already got this customer's cell phone number pulled up.
What
And
did happen there? Like, where did that information go?
yeah, it's a good question. It's a good
That's a
question.
good question.
Um,
The
because it could
question
have been a
the
two
question
minute
I
phone
want to
call.
know
Yeah.
the question I want to know is, have there never been carjackings and cars stolen in New Orleans? I mean, like, has this never happened before? Somehow, I have to believe it has.
I mean, it
I mean,
has,
the cops
because the
knew
police
exactly what
knew where
happened.
to call. The police
Yeah,
knew
they
where
did
to
not
call.
seem
That
surprised.
line
Exactly.
was not broken. This has happened before. Everybody knew how to manage that part of the process. The driver got there to pick up. I mean, like, all that is working.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
What happened
Normal. Hmm.
with the people
Next time we
who
go
touched the customer?
Next time we go to New Orleans or Ensus, we got to tell everybody, just take an Uber.
Just
Don't,
take an Uber.
I mean, this stuff happens
don't.
everywhere. And that's the point. That's a fact
Sure.
of life, that things will happen. But we are judged by what we do when, as you said, things break down.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to have a plan for these situations. And I love the frame you put on this, John, that it's not about the humans at the end of the road who are delivering this. It's about the systems that are in place to support them. And I think there are so many stories we could all tell about where this breaks down. And I'm going to just double down on my request to all of you listening out there. If you know somebody at National in customer experience, we want to talk to them. We want to know what really happened. We want them to hear this episode. So please send them this episode. Send me a little DM on LinkedIn. Let me know who I should reach out to. We want to continue this conversation. My dream is that we bring John Dahl back on to meet the head of CX for National Car Rental and have a conversation as experienced strategists, as humans, as customers.
And I will open with how much I still love them.
Yeah.
Nice heart.
Because
there.
they've done a lot right.
Yeah,
They've done a
they
lot
have.
right.
Cool.
Yeah.
I've had hundreds of excellent experiences with them.
Well, this was really fun. I hope nobody choked on their tea while we were dishing. John, you're an awesome storyteller, a pretty awesome human, a heck of an experienced strategist. We are so pleased to work with you. So fun to explore these important topics with you. Hope you'll come back again and give us the postscript next time something exciting happens. We might need to make this a regular series. Drama with Dahl. And for those of you listening, if you have dishy stories that you want to share with us, again, find us on LinkedIn. You know where we are. Dave Norton, Aranza Savas. You'll find us. We trust you. We believe in you. Or reach out to us at stonemantle.com, where you'll find the Experience Strategy Trend Report and a host of other resources to help you be the best you can possibly be for your company and your customer. So here's to making a positive impact with our work. Here's to making people's worlds and lives a little bit better through our interactions. Thank you so much for listening. Dave, thanks for being an awesome co-host. And John Dahl, thank you for being a wonderful guest.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Experience Strategy Podcast. If you're having fun nerding out with us, please follow and share wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Find more episodes and continue the conversation with us at experiencestrategypodcast.com.